Hi, I'm Sean, and I hope you tune into my interview show called Tuesday Cafe every Tuesday morning at 10 on 88.5 WMNF. I interview environmentalists, politicians, social justice activists, academics, and other experts about topics that impact you right here in the Tampa Bay area. I focus on issues that are important locally and across the whole state of Florida. The show is called Tuesday Cafe with Sean Canan. It's every Tuesday morning at 10 on 88.5 FM, WMNF Tampa, and on WMNF.org.
You are tuned to WMNF Radio 88.5 FM. This is the public affairs program called Community Speaks, coming your way each Monday at noon. And I want to thank you for spending your lunch hour with me. I'm your host, Patro Mabili. And today, one of the main questions is, what is famine? It is the extreme scarcity of food. A new report warns that famine is imminent in Gaza as fighting between Israel and Hamas continues. Aid groups also say that 1.4 million people in Haiti are on the verge of famine. Famine occurs when households and entire regions of countries reach a catastrophic level of hunger and lack of access to food. Famine is the highest and direst level of 5 on a scale created in 2004 by a coalition of government and aid groups that monitor the severity of hunger in the world. Children younger than 5, pregnant women, the elderly, and those with underlying health conditions are most at risk. And also, today on Community Speaks, we'll talk about the Supreme Court again. Supreme Court will again confront the issue of abortion, this time over access to widely used medication. And also, what is worker burnout? The Florida Center for Nursing has created a free program to combat the burnout nurses face throughout their careers. We can talk about that. We'd love to hear from some nurses today. We will also talk about the criminalization of homelessness by new legislation just signed by the Florida governor. Local governments could be required to pony up big money to meet the demands of this legislation that Governor DeSantis signed, barring homeless people from either camping or sleeping on public property. The encampments would be created if local homeless shelters reach maximum capacity, and the law requires regional entities to provide necessary behavioral treatment access as a condition of a county or city creating an encampment. And the State Department of Children and Families would oversee local governments that set up designated areas for the homeless to camp for up to a year under the new law, which takes effect October the 1st. And during the legislature's latest session, Florida's homeless population was estimated to be about 30,700 in 2023. That's a fraction of the homeless population in many large U.S. cities, but the law's sponsor said it will worsen because of Florida's rapid population growth, and opponents of the law say it is meant to round up the homeless and hide them from public view. And beginning in January 2025, the new law will allow residents, local business owners, and the state attorney general to file a lawsuit to stop any city or county from allowing the homeless to camp or sleep on public property. And also, the NAACP warns athletes against Florida colleges, and Florida's rampant anti-black policies are a direct threat to the advancement of our young people. And Florida DeSantis signs one of the country's most restrictive social media bans for minors, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is Community Speaks, and I'm your host, Patro Mabili, and you can also find me on social media at Mabilio on Facebook. But we're going to talk about all of these issues, beginning with the confrontation of famine in this world and also burnout. But starting with famine, Gaza and Haiti are on the brink of famine, and the experts say, here's what all of that means, that famine occurs, as I said, when households and entire regions of countries reach a catastrophic level of hunger and lack of access to food. And this catastrophic hunger is so dire in these two world hotspots that famine is imminent in northern Gaza and approaching in Haiti, with hundreds of thousands of people in both places struggling to avoid starvation. And that's according to food security experts and aid groups who are warning about the toll from hunger caused by the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and the crisis in Haiti caused by criminal gangs attacking the country's key government institutions. But in Gaza, virtually every resident is struggling to get enough food, and 1.1 million people, half the population, are expected to face the highest level of severe hunger in the coming weeks. And that's according to a report from Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, an agency that monitors hunger globally. Today, the group warned that famine could occur in Gaza anytime between mid-March and May, without an end to hostilities and immediate access to essential supplies and services, which is why the call for ceasefire has really ramped up, even coming from the United States, coming from the White House, in the State Department, all saying that there should be an immediate ceasefire so that people can get fed. And in Haiti, about 1.4 million people are on the verge of famine, and more than 4 million need help accessing food, and that's according to aid groups. But what does it all mean for a region to fall into famine? And how could it happen in these places so fast? And so here's what some people are saying. The IPC, a group of 15 global organizations and charities, was developed in 2004 during the famine in Somalia. And the group uses a 5-tier scale to monitor access to food and levels of hunger. Famine is the top tier, which is phase 5. The absolute inaccessibility of food to an entire population or a subgroup of a population, potentially causing death in the short term. And it occurs when 20% of the households have an extreme lack of food. 30% of children suffer from acute malnutrition, and at least 2 adults or 4 children per every 10,000 people die daily because of outright starvation or the interaction of malnutrition and disease. That top level follows the phase 3 crisis in phase 4 emergency. Levels of food need. Worldwide, nearly 158 million people face crisis hunger situations or worse, according to the IPC. And while the depth of the food crisis is in both places is new, the underlying conditions are not new. And that's according to the Director of Technical Services and Innovation at the aid group Action Against Hunger. And they, even before the war, 80% of Gazans relied on humanitarian aid. That's a lot of people. And nearly half of all households didn't have enough food. In Haiti, millions were already coping with emergency levels of hunger and crisis levels of food need. So when families and entire nations live so close to the brink, it is all too easy for conflict or other shocks to push them into catastrophe. And these are people who are working with aid groups on the ground, making these observations, making the difference between hunger, malnutrition, and starvation. Hunger is the informal term for the feeling that occurs when our bodies need to expect food, need or expect food. And aid groups say hunger occurs when people can't afford or physically obtain sufficient nutrition for an extended period of time. Malnutrition is a medical condition that occurs when people don't get the right calories to grow and function properly, leading to health problems. The deadliest form of malnutrition is severe acute malnutrition, which occurs when children are too thin for their height. This can happen, of course, suddenly, caused by a severe hunger crisis, or it can occur over time. If you're a child in a war zone, this is the case. It doesn't take much time for that to set in, malnutrition to set in. The starvation, now that's not a technical term according to aid groups, but it describes extreme suffering or death caused by the lack of food. Death from starvation can come surprisingly quick. According to one spokesperson for aid groups. And without food, the body uses carbohydrates and fats first, then turns to breaking down protein, including muscle and vital organs. The body begins to shut down functions, including digestion, which makes it harder to absorb any nutrients that are available. People suffer from extreme fatigue and become listless as the body tries to conserve energy. And without specialized treatment, organs stop functioning and the body's defenses can't fight infection. Many times, people without food die of common infections. If that doesn't happen, vital organs shut down and the heart stops. Children younger than 5, pregnant and breastfeeding women, the elderly, and the people with underlying health conditions are the most vulnerable, most at risk from malnutrition. And in acute crises like that seen in Gaza, malnutrition affects the youngest children first. And what happens if famine is declared? A declaration of famine would be made by top United Nations officials, and such a declaration carries no binding obligations on UN members or states, but serves to focus global attention on the problem. So who has the power to do something about it? And I know we'd all know that in Gaza, the country of Israel, this right-wing government with its 2 war cabinets should really cease fire right now. I mean, how much retribution can you really get before you really start to come up with some solutions moving forward, come up with some political solutions that, especially that which the world has been talking about, that both sides, the Palestinians need a homeland of their own, a state of their own. That will go a long way in solving the violence crisis, because right now there's a famine that is about to set in Gaza, and you got your problems and the world's problems are going to be far worse. So we need to really get a handle on that. We can continue talking about that. We're going to also move on to another story. The young people have brought to us locally the story about nurses burning out. Florida Center for Nursing has created a program to combat burnout, which is very important, very needed. You know, with all of the crisis going on in the world, and then coming out of the pandemic, there's been an overwhelming stressors on our medical staff, especially our nurses. And so there's something that is a program that is being created called the Emotional Vaccine Program. It's being offered for free by the Florida Center for Nursing for all current and future nurses in the state. The Florida Center for Nursing has created this program, and because they say nurses encounter overwhelming demands in their professional roles, putting them at risk for burnout. Their responsibilities often extend around the clock, requiring them to provide care to people who are often at their worst or in times of crisis. Instead of studying the problem, the executive director of Florida Center for Nursing wants to start working towards a solution, starting with the Emotional Vaccine Program. It's according to the executive director, it's critical that we find a way to allow nurses to flourish and thrive in the profession. And I understand we all have to recognize that this is a critical workforce. Florida nurses who sign up will receive 2 to 3 minute videos via text messages once a week for 6 months. The videos will contain evidence-based tips and strategies to support their well-being. And there are more than 440,000 nurses in Florida, and 20,000 nursing students graduate each year. The Florida Center for Nursing is hoping that all of these nurses and potential nurses will take advantage of the vaccine program, the Emotional Vaccine Program. This center, which is located at the University of South Florida, says that burnout can have consequences such as low job satisfaction and a low level of commitment, which reduces the quality of care and worsens Florida's nursing shortage. And so based on a Florida Hospital Association analysis in 2021, the state faces an overall shortage of 59,000 nurses by 2035. And there are people who've been nurses, you know, one person chimes in saying they were a nurse for more than 20 years, and the challenges that they faced at the beginning of their career are very similar to the challenges that nurses are still facing. And this particular nurse added that if a healthy work environment isn't provided for the state's nurses, they are at risk to leave their patients and the workforce all together. And that's the kind of burnout this Center for Nursing is trying to defend against. And so if you're a nurse, give us a call. Talk about what you have been facing, especially in the last 3 years. And, this is also in addition to Doctors Without Borders and people who go around the country, around the world, trying to bring relief to people around the world. And as we were just talking about famine, these medical staff are needed everywhere. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. You are tuned to Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mobili. This is Public Affairs Radio programming here in the midday. Just an opportunity to talk to you. We've been talking about famine, and we've been talking about burnout, especially of our medical personnel in this country and in the need around the world. 813-239-9663. As I also mentioned at the top of the program, there have been some laws that are going to start taking effect in this state. And one of those is the criminalization of homelessness. The governor has exclaimed that he's not trying to criminalize homelessness, but it's definitely going to be a stressor on local governments, especially those who have tried to allow some relief for people who are homeless and not relief of jail. But this bill looks like it's going, if you don't put them in jail, then local governments, if shelters are overwhelmed, are going to be footing the bill for all that has happened. Doesn't look like it deals with any root causes. But like I said, Florida will have this bill is one of the most contingent that's come out of the legislature this year, talking about the criminalization of the homeless in this state. And, this is an old tactic that has been used, usually in response to businesses and they demanding that police be brought in to restrict the movement of the homeless in this state or in a particular area. And on top of that, the NAACP is also warning athletes against coming to college in Florida. There's an ongoing battle with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and is seen as a war against black athletes, according to one civil rights group, the NAACP, and it is issuing a warning to those athletes who may be participating in college sports in the state or considering doing so to look at other places to study and play. Florida's rampant anti-black policies are a direct threat to the advancement of our young people and their ability to compete in a global economy. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are paramount, ensuring equitable and effective educational outcomes, said the NAACP president, Derek Johnson. He also goes on to say the value black and other college athletes bring to large universities is unmatched. If these institutions are unable to completely invest in those athletes, it's time they take their talents elsewhere. The NAACP will remain unwavering in their efforts to hold Governor Ron DeSantis and all oppressive elected officials accountable for their attempts to unravel our democracy. And the group asserts in a letter to current and prospective athletes that as a result of the DeSantis administration's anti-black ideals, all state-funded universities in Florida will be forced to dismantle their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Some of those people who have been leading up those diversity offices have just been outright fired, and some have just decided to change the names of those offices or the focus of those offices so that they don't fall under the threat from the state government. But the diversity, Florida will be forced to dismantle these diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, noting that while the University of Florida may be the first, they will not be the last. The NAACP urges people to consider any potential decision to attend and compete at a predominantly white institution in the state of Florida. This is not about politics. It's about the protection of our community, the progression of our culture, and most of all, it's about your education and your future. That's more from the NAACP president. And again, his name is Derrick Johnson. That's the state's president. DeSantis' administration has had a considerable conflict with the NAACP. Last year, the group issued a travel warning against coming to Florida, a move the governor called a stunt, as if all of his actions haven't also been stunts. Even when it comes to the Haitians who are escaping violence, and right now Cubans are also uprising against the faltering economy on the island. There's a lot of violence coming out of Haiti, but here's the governor saying we'll just round them up and send them to Martha's Vineyard. So that's another stunt that he's planning on carrying out. But I guess it just looks and feels good to the MAGA base, and they're all in the Republican side competing for that base. But we're going to continue to watch out for these type of policies. And again, the NAACP is warning athletes not to come to college in this state as long as these anti-black policies and the threat to diversity, equity, and inclusion continues to play itself out on college campuses. We're going to continue to see these kinds of advisories. But it's interesting that the NAACP focused on the athletes because despite all of the racist rhetoric, they still want the athletic program to be successful. And you'll put up with any program that continues to uphold great athletes. So that could be a powerful warning from the NAACP to the state of Florida, is to warn athletes not to come here and face these type policies. 813-239-9663. So while there's anti-black threats, there are threats to the homeless, threats to immigrants in this state, threats to trans. A lot of these anti-woke policies have failed according, in the courts in Florida. But there's still not a lot to stop the governor from continuing to doing these things, stop the legislature from continuing to play politics with people's lives. And so we're going to continue to see these threats and people responding to them. 813-239-9663 is the number to call if you want to join the discussion to talk about politics in the state of Florida and to talk about what is happening with the Supreme Court, because we're also going to see a Supreme Court that is going to come back to deal with the abortion issue. There are right-wing legislators who are trying to stop even the use of the abortion pill, mifepristone, I believe it's called. We'll get some more information about that. But it's going to step widely. The Supreme Court is considering a new abortion case affecting women across the United States. Abortion opponents want the High Court in arguments tomorrow to ratify a ruling from a conservative federal appeals court that will limit access to a medication called mifepristone, which was used in nearly 2/3 of abortions last year. And the case comes 2 years after the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, enabling bans or severe restrictions on abortion in many Republican-led states. A decision should come by late June. Like the 2022 ruling, this decision could become a political campaign issue. Mifepristone is made by New York-based Danco Laboratories. An early ruling from a U.S. District Court judge in Texas would have revoked the drug's approval. So that decision to reverse Roe had immediate political consequences. That's Roe versus Wade, the court case that had made abortions legal in this country for over 50 years, and then all of a sudden got overturned when the 3 conservative justices got on the court, even after saying in their interviews before being approved for the court that was settled law. Clearly it was unsettled once they got on the court. That decision to reverse Roe had immediate political consequences, with Democrats making the case that the court had taken away a right that women held for half a century and winning elections as a result ever since. Even conservative-leaning states like Kansas and Ohio voted against abortion restrictions. If the court were to uphold restrictions on medication abortions, it could roil the election landscape in races for Congress and the presidency. And By rolling back Food and Drug Administration changes to the use of mifepristone, the ruling will cut off access to the drug through the mail and impose other restrictions, even in states where abortion remains legal. The restrictions would shorten the time when mifepristone can be used in pregnancy to 7 weeks from its current 10 weeks. And most adults in the U.S., 58% believe medication abortion pills are very or somewhat safe when taken as directed by a doctor, according to a poll that was conducted from May of 2023. That 60 and 65% have a lot or some confidence in the Food and Drug Administration to ensure that medications sold in the U.S. are safe and effective. A decision could come, as I said, by this summer, no matter the outcome. The Supreme Court has not seen in its last abortion case. Legal battles are pending over state restrictions, and new federal limits are likely if former President Donald Trump, this 45, the President 45, if he's the Republicans' presumptive nominee for 2024, returns to the White House, this is going to be an issue. He may even seat some more Supreme Court justices if he's reelected. But next month, the justices will hear arguments over whether a federal law on emergency treatment at hospitals must include abortions, even if states that have otherwise banned them. Mifepristone, made by Danko Laboratories, is one of two drugs, along with misoprostol, used in medication abortions, and their numbers have been rising for years. They have accounted for 63% of the more than 1 million abortions in the U.S. last year, according to an estimate by one institute which supports abortion rights. And more than 5 million people have used mifepristone since the year 2000. So, we can go and talk more about what that does, but it is becoming even easier to get these two drugs in some states now that CVS and Walgreens have announced pilot programs to dispense the pills at their pharmacies. So the number of medication abortions, as I said, is rising for several reasons. Taking pills at home to end the pregnancy is less invasive than surgery, more convenient than having to travel to an abortion clinic, and more private, allowing women to avoid anti-abortion protesters who picket clinics. And, here in the month of March, this is still an important time to talk about women's issues, these issues, because, these are our mothers, these are our sisters, our wives, these are people who we care about, and their rights are under attack right now, as many people's are in the state of Florida. 813-239-9663. Irene stands ready to take your telephone calls. You can also write me, DJ, at WMNF.org. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. Of course, next hour, we'll be getting back to the music. Lanny Whaling will be coming to us with It's the Music Monday. But right now, we can hear from you if you want to join a discussion about the laws that are about to take effect here in the state of Florida, the issues that are going to be confronting to the Supreme Court, and, of course, the global issues, the issues of famine and war, as we continue to watch what is happening to people around in various countries, especially in our backyard right here, and what the response is. People who are in power, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on, some of people's responses, some governments, especially here in the state of Florida, the response is anti-human. The disregard for people's humanity seems to be first and foremost, and just making political points. For those who, we have a conservative movement, a Republican Party that seems at its heart of hearts, they have embraced a sort of right-wing authoritarianism. And so it's like what they say goes. They make the rules and we all have to follow them. And it doesn't have to make sense, but it doesn't have to recognize people's humanity. And you don't have to deal with any root causes. Let's just impose a will, whether it's on individuals, whether it's on local governments. We're seeing all of that play out right here in the state of Florida. And as a citizen of the state of Florida and as citizens of the world, you have a right to weigh in. You have something to say because these things are all done in your name. And in order for them to be legitimized, these people, these authoritarians will stand for elections. If they win, the elections were great. If they lose, then the elections were rigged against them. So they look for ways of disinforming people on purpose. And so that these laws, these reactionary laws, take effect. And we're going to be looking at a law against homelessness taking effect on October the 1st that may really become economic crisis for local governments. 813-239-9663. It looks like Chris has something to add to the conversation. Don't know where you're calling from, Chris. Why don't you tell us where you're calling from here on Community Speaks?
From Longwood, Florida.
Thank you. You say what?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I am a follower of Christ, and I know we're having these discussions about abortion rights and so forth, and I'm not calling to bash anybody or anything, but have a educational discussion, because we all know that no matter what happens, women are going to get pregnant and in some cases going to have to do something, right?
Yeah, well, couples get pregnant. Yeah, takes two.
Understand? Well, I mean, I don't know what the statistics are of, you know what I mean, of the ended lives that occur. I'm just saying, as far as whether that was a actual couple or they just got together one night and someone got pregnant or whatever the numbers are. But I guess one question I have for you, I know that we're talking about abortion rights. Are you personally a follower of Christ?
I don't think that's germane. Doesn't matter, but I do respect people who are. That doesn't mean you have to impose.
Okay. I just think that's where the divide really is. You know what I'm saying? I think the divide comes down to whether people believe that at conception there's a child or not, right?
Mm-hmm. That's part of it. That's part of why these laws were passed, because of these heartbeat bills. Right. They were just waiting for the Supreme Court to give them the okay, and those laws were already written.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other things that go into it. I mean, I'm absolutely pro-choice for everybody in the world. Freedom is about choice, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So, in the majority of situations that we have pregnancies, and I don't know what the number would be, but I would expect it to be in excess of 95% of the women that do end up getting pregnant. I think that, to me, the choice was made when they actually consensually had sex, knowingly that they could get pregnant.
Yeah. What choice was made?
Well, a choice that, hey, I am going to have sex, and I'm consensually having sex. I understand that sex is not really for pleasure, it's for the reproduction of the human being, and so I could get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
So I basically said at that moment, hey, if I get pregnant, I get pregnant. Mm-hmm. Right?
Okay. So
anyway, I think that we really need to respect that, and there's lots of people in this country who are able and willing to take children. You know what I'm saying? Adopt them.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be looking at something in the middle here, not creating such a divide in our country, because I'm glad that my mother chose not to abort me. I'm assuming you probably are glad your mother chose not to abort you, and she had the right to do that. And what amazing people could potentially exist and change the world if somehow we were focusing more on the life than the, listen, it's hard, man. Being a single mother, taking up a child and taking care of a child is a difficult situation. We all know that.
Yeah.
And it's also a very difficult situation to give your child up.
Yeah, it's all difficult. That's why it was settled, Chris. It was settled law, according to those justices who were appointed to the court by number 45. And then all of a sudden it wasn't settled. So the problem came from the politicians. This was fine.
Right.
It was legal and it was safe. Everything was just fine. And now all of a sudden, look what we have. We have 50 different approaches in each state, and it's a violation of other rights. There are states who are trying to tell women not to even travel to take care of business. That's their business. Politicians should have stayed out of it.
Yeah, well, I think that everybody makes their own individual choices in life, right? And we are going to all face the consequences of our own individual decisions.
Yeah.
And, I just pray for everybody in the situation. I want this country to come together, you know what I mean? And not be divided. This is still the greatest country in the world.
Okay.
Right? And we have more to be proud of than we do not to be proud of.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that we've done as a country that are not good. And there's lots of things we should be addressing and fixing, but we need to do it as a country. You know what I mean? Like, we need to get more education to everybody so that, like you were saying, there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually believe that 80% of the country, 80% of the country has the ability to come to an agreement on most things.
Mm-hmm. If left to their own recognizance, not a bunch of disinformation.
Exactly. I agree with you. Without having politicians that are paid for by somebody on either side of the fence. You know what I mean? For whatever reason. So anyway, man, I appreciate the fact that you guys are on here, and I hope that we can get the truth out. And, we can, like I said, we can. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And it sounds like you're going through something. So let's go ahead and let you take care of that while I go to Fort Meade and talk to Erica. Erica, thank you for calling the Community Speaks. You say what?
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
I don't have anything to comment necessarily on the laws being passed or not passed. As an anarchist, more specifically an agorist, I don't really believe in relying on the government to solve problems. In fact, they typically tend to make things worse. So I offer a solution. I am founder of the Four Thieves Vinegar Collection, which is an organization that offers open source plans and information on things such as how to build your own EpiPen, how to build your own defibrillator for less than $600. And they have this small lab and instructions on how to get set up. And mifepristone is one of the medications or, chemical compounds that one can create for themselves. I actually have on my person about 30 doses that I carry around with me and, leave places with information so people can, do for themselves as opposed to waiting on government, to solve our problem.
So you're saying do you have the ability to create the same product?
Yes, the Four Thieves Vinegar Collection is their site, and they have a number, and they're constantly working on offering more open source plans for people to, like I said, they have plans to build your own defibrillator for less than $600. You can make your own EpiPen, and as said, besides the mifepristone, other things that people can make for themselves.
Oh, okay. and
there's other solutions
apply it through the EpiPen.
And the government to do nothing because it's just all they do is make things worse.
Yeah, when, you got these two sides that are just intent, especially the one side that is intent on inserting itself into people's personal lives. Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, well, it comes from both sides. So, there's solutions to every problem that we as a community can do for ourselves. And if people spent half as much time worrying about their community and their family and their friends, there would be no need for government. Look up counter-economics. Look up agorism, using counter-economics to starve the state. I have traded for or done for myself, amazing things, but, community can do when we're not fighting each other.
That's
and
true.
not relying on government to solve our problems.
Well, the government should be by the people, right? And there needs to be some mechanism for there needs to be some mechanism for legitimacy, I believe. But you're right. There are communes, there are co-ops, there are different ways of people governing themselves and feeding themselves and taking care of themselves. Thank you, Erica.
You're welcome.
813-239-9663 is the number to call. Not sure if anarchism is ever going to be the way to go in a country where those excesses of violence is always bubbling just beneath the surface. Go ahead, Mike in Sarasota. You say what?
Yes. Hey, it's Mike in Sarasota. And I don't know what it is about your show, but, I'll be in the middle of something, and I hear somebody say something, and I'll go, oh, man, I got to lay down what I'm doing and make a call. I can't let that go by.
Okay, what did you hear?
By the time I waited on hold, I was laughing so hard I like to fell out of the chair and needed a defibrillator. But,
okay.
Yeah, everywhere I just noticed this, it's just so sad that the world is so sick, but, I remember one time I attended a church, and just in case anybody needs to know, yes, I'm a believer in Christ. And I appreciate that brother. I know he's doing what he feels is right, and that's all good. I appreciate him putting in a plug for the Savior. I ain't afraid to say his name, but, we weren't talking about that necessarily. We was talking about, women's bodies and their right to govern themselves.
Uh-huh.
And I keep going through this over and over with everybody I know, and ain't nobody got an answer. Besides, they just shake their head and go, well, that's the way it is. Well, I don't have a uterus. None of my male friends, and no one has the ability to give birth but women. So women are the life bringers, and now we're trying to, hurt the women that bring the life to our own race, to our own species. And it always amazes me, the older I get, and I ain't that old, but I'm old enough to see that we're the only species on the planet that plans to exterminate each other. And to me, that just is so we got to do some rethinking, people. But, I don't know how you do it. I got to say, if I was in your shoes, I don't know how I could keep my mouth shut. I don't know. You got a lot of patience, brother. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the asset to the community. And I'm not making fun of nobody that was on or nothing. I appreciate my fellow callers because they took the time to call in, too.
Right.
But, when we would let women worry about women and women's issues, the women seem to do just fine for the last, 5,000-6,000 years that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah.
Kept us all nurtured, kept us all fed.
My mama raised 5 kids by herself. She never thought about abortion once. But,
right.
I'm not saying people don't do that. I've known plenty of people have abortions, but none of the people that have abortions are men. All the people that have abortions are women. And so men need to get their nose out women's business, would be my opinion. And the politicians especially. What you said was right on. What the politicians would stay home and tend to their own family, and maybe if the politicians would pick up a shovel or a rake or something to get a little work done, maybe we might appreciate more of what the rest of us going through here.
Yeah. And that caller, he did. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you first. I've been talking too much.
No, never too much. That's why we asked you to call. But I just wanted to.
Now my paint's drying on the porch, and I done got this off my chest, but I just had to speak up. Everybody has a right to everything. but I can't fly. I'm not a butterfly, so I don't go ahead and try to be a butterfly. I just look at him and appreciate him.
Right.
Well, the same thing with a lot of this stuff. And this genocide in Gaza that we're going to be party to, war crimes and all, that's going to come back to haunt us. And everybody I know feels the same, except the people who get the stuff pounded into their head about the evil whoever they pick to be evil today. And don't see that, humans are humans, and everybody deserves the right to live, and medicine, and peace, and a bed to sleep in. And just the cruelty and the savagery that we see these days is just so disheartening. So, all right, I'll take my peace now. I'm going to let it go.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for calling.
Appreciate you.
Calling.
All right. Bye-bye.
Down in Sarasota. And, what about miscarriages? Because, you brought up my mother, but my mother had about 4 miscarriages, and we don't have any conversations about that. Again, it's about the root causes, and it's about getting out of people's business, and that be something that the government and the politicians stop trying to micromanage for women. 813-239-9663. Let's go to Palmetto and talk to John. Go ahead, John. You say what?
Hi, how you doing? Okay, the gentleman a few calls back who called about saying that he was talking everyone down in a sense, as far as if you guys could only know the truth, and they're being tolerant of something. I'm wondering why a lot of these callers. I mean, every week, every time I listen to it, we've got all these complaints. But how about people who are who don't believe in war?
Yeah,
I'm happen to be one of them. As far as they continue doing that against my approval. And people who sit there and saying they're just thinking about the babies. I tell you what, I haven't heard a word from them about the more than, I think, a couple thousand of those over in Israel were babies in Gaza. I mean, you could go on and on and on of what they do with our government money. That's not everybody's favor. So to act like they're being so violent, they're being so tolerant.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not opposed to that, killing is killing. They're guilty of that. We all are guilty of that, of being whatever part of it we are. However much you contribute to, however much you want to happen. I mean, democracy is a high maintenance, hands-on government.
Yeah.
Most of the people who call, what they're really guilty of is not being a player. How many of them have sat to hours trying to make a point at a commission meeting or done all the available stuff to do? So they just and I have a piece where I put America fell asleep at the wheel and woke up with all the grace of a demolition derby, and that's pretty much what happened here, and it's been going on since it goes back to before 2010 when London was people were rioting in London. I mean, we've had a lot of turmoil in local. So I'm just tired of these people who keep saying, well, you got to think of the kids. Man, let's think of the kids. How about the American Indian kids? That we could go back and everywhere you go, it's nothing's all pretty. So we have to bite the bullet, try and live through it, make it better if we can. But you can't go to war with each other because you think you're right.
Yeah.
I don't think they have the skill or our leaders don't have the skill or the will to make the changes. It's not like getting rid of them. It's reminding them moment by moment that they're working for us. And if they can't do something, we want them out of there fast, Well, thanks, buddy. I couldn't like any of the shows as much as I like this one because you really do sort of, allow people to cut to the bone for their own sake, and it's we have to fix things, not find ways to just teach each other how to do it. Because I haven't met anybody that knows yet. Have a good day.
Okay. Yeah. You too, John from Palmetto.
Talk to you. Bye.
Bye-bye. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. And you can write me, DJ, at WMNF.org. And you have been writing, and I certainly do appreciate that. And we're going to go to Spring Hill and hear what Jennifer has to add to this conversation. I so appreciate you calling, Jennifer. You say what here on Community Speaks?
Well, what I say is people have alternatives, and it's great to say I'm an anarchist and everything else, but, what roads are they driving on? I mean, there's a lot of things that government does provide, and a good government would be more benevolent, and it would stay out of things that it should stay out of, like women's choices or humans' choices. I mean, as a woman, I'm pretty adamant that I want to take care of my own health care, but as a human, I also want to as well. I mean, when they were saying like, oh, you have, forced vaccination, I didn't believe in that either. It's like my body, my choice. And, it's interesting how that kind of came. Well, not for that. But, so anyway, I feel like healthcare for all humans. And that's why, when people ask, like, what race are you? I just say human. But that's one thing. And we need to be more humanistic with the world. I mean, right now, you were talking about Sudan. That's, 25 million people on the verge of starving there. And then, of course, Gaza. And these are things that we can't really solve the problem in Sudan other than just give more money to it instead of like funding it less, which is very cold-hearted. But that's what the government just did with their new bill and passed, and the Democrats were all for it because of giving money for more war. And we can't just do things like that. But like with Gaza, that would be an easy fix. But we've got Genocide Joe in there, and Donald Trump would be as bad or worse. As far as that goes. So
I'd be willing to bet you.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I hear that a lot from because I'm in the Green Party. And I would like to say there's choices out there. And actually, the Green Party candidate has a really good chance of getting on all 50 states on the ballot. And they all start with 0 votes. So this whole thing of people thinking, oh, lesser evil, now it's gone to like the least awful or something, like fear and loathing voting. And we got to look for better things. We can't just be so resigned to like, oh, it's just the way it is. We make our reality.
Right.
So if we really want peace, then you vote for a party that expounds peace. I mean, Green Party, it's like we're international, and there's 4 values that democracy, ecology, peace, and social justice. And so if people are wanting those things, you can't just keep voting for these corporate, war parties. The military-industrial complex is paying for their way. APAC is paying their way, which should be, registered as a foreign agent, which I guess JFK was going to try to do. And then, suddenly he's assassinated. We don't really know who or why, but, a lot of the things he would have implemented. And I've just seen, I got into politics in 1968, and I can tell you that I was pretty young, but I was disillusioned by the fact that the Democratic Party didn't really want to have progressive candidates. They didn't care for McCarthy. They didn't push for McGovern, and those are both U.S. senators. But the Republicans have always been bad. I mean, they keep getting from bad to worse with John Birchers, and then
times changed and things got worse. But what's the North Star?
We got to start thinking like, well, it's the least worst, and and start to work towards what we really want. I mean, I don't go to the store and buy like, well, these vegetables are really rotten and these look like they have a whole bunch of chemicals sprayed on them. I'm going to get better. I'm not going to settle for like, well, let's see, do I want more chemicals or do I want something half rotten? I mean, it's, what I'm saying? I don't do that in my life, and I wish more people would kind of realize that we do have options and go for those options.
Well, that's true.
And, I mean, it's like we're spoilers. Really? I mean, there's nobody. I'm going to say nobody, but a lot of people aren't happy with the forced choices they have right now. A 77-year-old and an 81-year-old, 4 years later. I mean, it's not healthy, and so we need to think that we do have a choice, and we do have options, and we should roll with it because it goes across the board. But right now, what's going on in Israel is horrific. And we could stop it, and the refusal to stop it. It's like the Democrats are almost like with this candidate, they're throwing the election away. They can't blame us for stealing it because people are going to vote for what they want when they vote for us. Well, they're not going to vote.
Well, I do think that people are forced into recognizing that we've got to do something to stop the famine and to stop the violence. Thank you, Jennifer. We're out of time.
All right, yeah, I'll bet we are. Okay, well, thank you. Bye-bye, movie.
Bye now. And, of course, following Community Speaks, we'll be getting back to the music with Blandon Whalen. It's the Music Monday. But first, we got to get local news updates from the scoop. So keep it tuned to WMNF Tampa. Thank you for joining me here on Community Speaks. My name is Patrick Mobili, and we'll be back next week talking about technology. So keep it tuned right here to your community radio station, WMNF.